My 7-year-old dad was getting scammed out of his retirement. I told you, Emily, he's a professional. My father's voice cracks as he says it, and that's what stops me cold in the doorway. Not the stranger sitting at the dining table with his leather portfolio spread open like he owns the place. Not the stack of glossy brochures promising returns that sound like lottery wins. It's the way Dad's hands shake when he reaches for the pen. The man looks up at me with a smile that belongs in a car commercial. You must be the daughter. Mark Brennan. Your father's told me so much about you. Funny. He's never mentioned you. I step closer, eyes on the half-signed check sitting between them. $10,000. Made out to something called Pinnacle Growth Solutions. Mark's smile holds. We've been working together for 3 months now. Your dad's portfolio is really taking shape. What portfolio? Emily, please. Dad's voice is tight. Mark's been very helpful. He's gotten me into some excellent opportunities. What opportunities? Mark leans back, fingers laced like he's about to explain something to a child. Your father's funds are currently allocated across several high-yield investment channels. Exclusive access. The kind of growth potential most people never see. Which channels? I'm not at liberty to disclose specifics. Client confidentiality. He's your client, he can tell me. Dad looks at Mark, then at me, then down at his hands. It's complicated, honey. There are different accounts, different strategies. Where's the paperwork? Mark's smile tightens. Everything's digital now. Secure portal access. Much safer than physical documents. So show me the portal. I don't think you understand how these arrangements work. His tone shifts just slightly. Still friendly, but with an edge underneath. Your father is a grown man capable of making his own financial decisions. You're too emotional to understand financial growth. The air in the room changes. Emotional. I pull out my phone. What's your firm's registration number? Excuse me? Your FINRA number? Every licensed advisor has one. What's yours? Mark stands, gathering his brochures with practiced efficiency. I don't appreciate being interrogated in front of my client. Your father called me here to discuss his next investment phase, not to be ambushed by family drama. Then you won't mind if I confirm your credentials. His hand pauses over the portfolio, just for a second. Then the smile returns, wider than before. Of course not, though I'd hate to see your father miss this window. These opportunities don't wait. What opportunities? I move between him and my father. Name one actual investment. One stock, one bond, one fund, anything specific. The Meridian Accelerator package. Your father's already seen significant returns. How much? That's between me and my client. I look at Dad. How much? He won't meet my eyes. Mark said the statements come quarterly. It hasn't been a full quarter yet, so you haven't seen any returns. It takes time for these things to mature. How much have you given him total? Silence. Dad, how much? 40,000. His voice is barely a whisper. Maybe a little more. The room tilts. Mark is already moving toward the door, portfolio tucked under his arm. I can see this isn't a good time. We'll reschedule when things are calmer. You're not leaving. I step into his path. Not until you show me documentation, account numbers, something with an actual company name and address. I don't have to show you anything. His voice drops, the friendly mask gone. Your father is my client. You have no legal standing here. Then I'll get some. I hold up my phone, finger hovering over Dad's bank contact. One call. That's all it takes to freeze every account and start an investigation. His jaw tightens. You're making a mistake. Prove it. Show me the paperwork. He looks at my father, then back at me. The smile returns, thin and cold. I'll be in touch, he says, and walks out. The door clicks shut. Dad stares at the unsigned check still sitting on the table, and I watch his hands start to shake again. The kitchen light flickers while Dad makes his 4th cup of coffee he won't drink. He's been circling the table for 20 minutes, touching things without picking them up. The salt shaker, the fruit bowl, the edge of his placemat. I acted fine. You accused him of lying, Emily. He's been nothing but helpful these past few months. Do you know how hard it is to find someone who actually listens, who takes time to explain things? What did he explain? Dad stops pacing. The opportunities, the growth strategies. Name one. He opens his mouth, closes it. His fingers drum against the counter. The Meridian thing. You heard him say it. That's not a strategy. That's a name. What does it actually invest in? Emerging markets, technology sectors. He showed me graphs. Can I see them? They're on his laptop. He brings it to our meetings. But you have login credentials, right? To check your accounts online? The drumming stops. He said it's safer if only he accesses the portal. Less risk of security breaches. My stomach drops. Dad, that's not how investment accounts work. You don't know that. Things have changed since you were in school. Everything's digital now. Everything's encrypted. Mark explained it all. When did you meet him? October. No, September. Late September. He picks up his coffee, sets it down without drinking. He came to the community center, gave a seminar on retirement planning. Very professional. Had a presentation and everything. How many people were there? Maybe 15? 20? Lots of us stayed after to talk to him individually. He was so patient. Answered every question. And then what? He called me a few days later. Said he'd been thinking about my situation and had some ideas. We met for coffee. Where? That place on Maple. The one with the good pie. Dad's pacing again. He bought. Insisted on it. Said he was grateful for the opportunity to help. Help how? My pension covers bills fine, but there's not much cushion. Mark said with smart investing, I could build something. Leave you and your brother something real instead of just this house. The weight of it sits between us. Dad's been worried about this for years. About being a burden. About leaving us with nothing but debt and his old furniture. So you gave him money. An initial investment, $5,000. He said we'd start small, see how things performed. And then, but you never saw the actual money come back. It's reinvesting, compounding. That's how you build wealth. He sounds like he's reciting something. Mark explained it's better to let it grow than to take distributions too early. I pull out my phone, open the browser. What's his company called again? Pinnacle Growth Solutions. I type it in. Nothing. Try variations. Add investment firm, financial services, advisor. Still nothing. Try his name, Dad suggests. Mark Brennan, investment advisor. Mark Brennan, financial planner. Mark Brennan, FINRA. Every search comes back empty or pulls up different people in different states. Nobody matching the man who was sitting at this table 2 hours ago. Maybe he's new, Dad offers. Building his client base. For 3 months? Without any online presence? I try another search. Without a company website? He has cards, very nice ones, embossed. Anyone can print cards. You're being paranoid. I'm being careful. I look up at him. Can I see your bank account? His face closes. Emily, please, that's private. You gave a stranger $40,000 based on a business card and a PowerPoint. Nothing about that is private anymore. He's not a stranger. We've had a dozen meetings. He knows about your mother, about my knee surgery, about that trip to Colorado I've been planning. That's not the same as knowing who he actually is. Dad's quiet for a long moment. Then he pulls out his phone with shaking hands and opens his banking app, turns the screen toward me. The numbers don't make sense at first. I'm expecting to see 1 or 2 large transfers. Instead, there are dozens. Small at first, 500 here, 1,000 there. Then bigger, 3,000, 5, 8, all marked the same way. Investment partner transfer. How much total? My voice sounds distant. Dad won't look at the screen. He said it's around 40, maybe 45. I scroll back through 3 months of transactions. Count them twice. Dad, it's 40,000. That can't be right. Look at it. He takes the phone. His face goes gray. I thought he said we were at 40. He told me last week we were at 40. When's the last time you checked your balance yourself? I don't know. He handles all that. He sends me updates. Written updates, emails. He calls. Explains everything over the phone. Says it's more personal that way. I scroll to the most recent transaction. $4,000 moved out yesterday morning. Did you authorize this one? We talked about it on Tuesday. He said there was a limited window for the tech sector opportunity. I told him to go ahead. By phone. Yes. No signature, no confirmation code, nothing in writing. He has access to the account. I added him as an authorized user. He said it would make transfers smoother, more efficient. The room goes very quiet. Outside, someone's dog barks. A car passes. Normal sounds from a normal evening in a normal neighborhood where normal people don't lose their life savings to men with embossed business cards. We need to call the bank, I say. It's almost 9. They have emergency lines. Emily, wait. Let me talk to Mark first. There has to be an explanation. The explanation is you've been scammed. You don't know that. Then prove me wrong. Call him right now. Ask for your account numbers. Ask for documentation. Ask for anything specific. Dad's finger hovers over Mark's contact. He doesn't press it. I can't. His voice breaks. If I accuse him and I'm wrong, he'll drop me. I'll lose everything I've built. Dad, you've already lost it. He sets the phone down and sinks into his chair, and I watch $40,000 worth of hope drain out of his face. Dad's awake before dawn, sitting at the kitchen table with a stack of papers I've never seen before. Brochures, printouts with charts that look professional until you notice the axes don't match the data. A folder labeled Growth Portfolio Summary that contains nothing but generic stock photos and motivational quotes about wealth building. He gave me these at our first meeting, Dad says when I come downstairs. I was going through them again, trying to see what you're seeing. I sit across from him. The papers smell faintly of cologne. Expensive cologne. Do you see it? He pushes a brochure toward me. This one talks about Meridian, but it doesn't say what Meridian actually does, just that it's positioned for aggressive growth in Q4. What quarter are we in now? Dad blinks. I don't know. It's Q1, we're in January. He pulls the brochure back, studies it like the words might rearrange themselves into something that makes sense. Maybe it's last year's materials. Maybe it's clip art and buzzwords. My phone alarm goes off. 8:30. The bank opens in 30 minutes. I need your permission to call them, I say. What if Mark has an explanation? Then he can give it to the fraud department. Dad's hands flatten against the table. You're really going to do this. We're really going to do this. He doesn't say yes, doesn't say no, just nods once barely, and that's going to have to be enough. The bank's fraud line puts me on hold 3 times before connecting me to someone named Valerie, whose voice suggests she's already had her coffee and her patience. I explain the situation in flat, factual sentences while Dad sits across from me, eyes closed. We flagged the account 6 weeks ago, Valerie says. Large cash transfers to an individual, pattern consistent with exploitation. But the account holder is legally competent, so without a formal complaint, our hands are tied. I'm filing one now. Are you authorized on the account? No, but he's sitting right here. He'll confirm. Dad takes the phone. Answers yes to a series of questions I can't hear. His voice gets smaller with each one. When he hands it back to me, his hand shakes. We're freezing the account immediately, Valerie says. No transfers in or out until we complete our investigation. He should receive a new card and PIN within 7 business days. What about the money that's already gone? That depends on where it went. If it's still in a recoverable account, we can work with law enforcement. If it's been moved offshore or converted to assets, the chances drop significantly. How significantly? I can't give you a percentage. Try. Valerie's quiet for a moment. Most victims recover less than 30%. Many recover nothing. I thank her and hang up. Dad's staring at the brochures like they might catch fire. He's going to call, Dad says. When the transfer doesn't go through, he's going to know something's wrong. Good. Emily, you don't understand. He's very persuasive, very convincing. If he thinks I'm doubting him, what will he do? Dad can't answer that. Because the truth is, Mark's power only works if Dad keeps believing. The second that stops, Mark's just a man with fake business cards and a rehearsed pitch. My brother calls at 9:15. I'd texted him last night with the basics, and he's been up ever since, apparently searching for any trace of Mark Brennan or Pinnacle Growth Solutions. Nothing, he says without preamble. No business registration, no licensing, no professional certifications. The address on his card is a UPS store in a strip mall 40 minutes from Dad's place. You drove there? I called. The clerk said they get a lot of mail for suite numbers that don't exist. People use them to look legitimate. I put him on speaker. Tell Dad. Dad, I'm sorry, this guy's a ghost. Everything about him is fake. Dad's face crumples. His references? He had references. Other clients who said wonderful things. Did you meet them? I ask. No, but Mark showed me testimonials on his laptop. Written by Mark, my brother says gently. On Mark's laptop. The silence stretches. Then Dad pushes back from the table and walks to the window. His shoulders curve inward like he's trying to make himself smaller. I'm so stupid. You're not stupid, I say. You're trusting. That's different. I gave him everything. Every time he called, I just said yes. He made it sound so simple, so safe. My phone buzzes. A text from a number I don't recognize. This is Mark Brennan. Attempted to process our scheduled transfer this morning and encountered an error. Please call at your earliest convenience to resolve. I show Dad. He reads it twice. He doesn't know yet, Dad says. He thinks it's just a technical problem. Let him keep thinking that. What if he disappears? What if we never find him? Then we find the others. Dad turns from the window. What others? He didn't drive 40 minutes to your community center for one client. He ran a seminar. He stayed after to talk to people. Plural. You think there are more? I think there's always more. I call Adult Protective Services next. The intake worker listens to the whole story without interrupting, and when I finish, she asks if my father has been eating regularly, managing his medications, maintaining his home. This isn't about his competence, I say. He's fine. He just trusted the wrong person. I understand, but we need to assess whether he's at risk for ongoing exploitation. He is. That's why I'm calling. I mean beyond this specific incident, whether there are vulnerabilities that make him a target. Dad's listening to every word. His face hardens. He's sitting right here, I say. You can ask him yourself. The worker apologizes and asks to speak with Dad. He takes the phone into the living room, and I hear his voice rise and fall, defensive at first, then resigned. When he comes back, his jaw is tight. She's sending someone tomorrow to evaluate me, to help, to see if I'm losing it, if I need a conservator. Nobody said that. She asked if I've been forgetting appointments, leaving the stove on, getting confused about dates. He drops into his chair, like I'm some confused old man who can't manage his own life. You were targeted by a professional criminal. That doesn't mean you're incompetent. Then why does it feel like everyone's treating me that way? Because the system doesn't know how to help without also assessing, evaluating, categorizing. Because the same vulnerability that made Dad a target makes institutions nervous. Because there's no script for this that doesn't involve some loss of dignity. My phone buzzes again. Another text from Mark. Attempted to reach you by phone. Please confirm account access at your earliest convenience. Time-sensitive opportunity closing Friday. He's pushing, I say. Dad reads over my shoulder. That's how he always does it. Makes everything urgent. Limited windows, exclusive access. If you don't act now, you'll miss out. What happens if you miss out? He moves on, finds someone who will act. Dad's voice goes quiet. I was never special. I was just convenient. I forward both texts to Valerie at the bank, then screenshot them for the APS file. Dad watches me document everything, turning his humiliation into evidence. What if they don't catch him, Dad asks. They will. But what if they don't? What if he just disappears and finds new people and I never get any of it back? Then we make sure everyone knows what to look for. We warn every community center and senior group within 100 miles. We make him famous for all the wrong reasons. Dad almost smiles. That's vindictive. That's practical. My brother texts that he's found the community center where Mark gave his seminar. The director remembers him, thought he was charming, professional, helpful, let him come back twice more for follow-up sessions. Did anyone else invest with him? I text back. She's checking her records. Says at least 8 people asked for his card. 8 people. 8 families potentially sitting at kitchen tables right now, trying to understand how they missed the signs. 8 people who might still be transferring money, still believing in Meridian and growth strategies and limited windows. Dad's phone rings. Mark's name on the screen. Don't answer, I say. Dad stares at it. 4 rings, 5. It goes to voicemail. We wait. 30 seconds later, the voicemail notification appears. Dad puts it on speaker. Mark's voice is smooth, concerned, faintly puzzled. Hey, just wanted to touch base about this morning's transfer issue. I'm sure it's just a bank error, probably some new security protocol. Give me a call when you get a chance and we'll get it sorted out. Also, that tech opportunity I mentioned? Still available, but we really need to move by end of week. Talk soon. Dad deletes it with shaking hands. He has no idea, Dad says. Not yet. But when he does, he'll run. And we'll have everything documented. Every text, every call, every fake promise. Dad looks at the stack of brochures on the table. All that glossy paper, all those empty words. I really thought he cared. He cared about your money. No, I mean about me, about my life. He remembered things. Asked about my knee, about your mother's anniversary. Little details. That's the job. Remembering details makes people feel seen. Feeling seen makes them trust you. Trust makes them sign things. Dad nods slowly, and I watch him reframe every coffee meeting, every patient explanation, every piece of flattery. Watching him see the mechanics underneath the friendship. It's like watching someone realize their favorite song was always just advertising. His phone buzzes. Another text from Mark, just checking in. Dad turns the phone face down and doesn't respond. The state attorney general's office calls back 40 minutes after I forward Mark's voicemails. The investigator introduces herself as Rachel Moreno and asks if my father is willing to participate in a controlled contact. What does that mean? Dad asks when I put her on speaker. You'd meet with him one more time. We'd be present but not visible, recording everything. The goal is to get him to explain his investment strategy on tape, ideally to contradict his previous statements or reveal additional victims. Dad's face drains. You want me to lie to him? I want you to ask questions. Let him do what he does naturally. If he's legitimate, he'll have answers. If he's not, he'll either avoid the questions or dig himself deeper. And if he realizes something's wrong, we'll be 10 feet away. Dad looks at me. I nod. Okay, he says. When? Tomorrow afternoon. Your place. We'll set up before he arrives. After she hangs up, Dad sits very still. I don't know if I can do this. You don't have to perform. Just be yourself. Ask the things you've been afraid to ask. What if I freeze? What if I give it away? Then they move in early. Either way, he doesn't walk out with anything. My brother arrives that evening with printouts. He's been digging through county records, business filings, anything with Mark's name or the company's. What he found is worse than nothing. Pinnacle Growth Solutions was registered 8 months ago, he says, spreading papers across the coffee table. Dissolved 4 months later. Never had a physical office. Never filed taxes. The registered agent is a service that files paperwork for $200 and asks no questions. So it was always fake, Dad says. Not always. Mark's real name is Marcus Brennan. He had a securities license once. Lost it 6 years ago for unauthorized trading. The state bars him from managing client funds, giving investment advice, or representing himself as a financial professional. But he gave me his card, his credentials, printed at FedEx. The certification numbers are real, but they belong to someone else. A guy in Ohio who had his license number stolen and used on at least 4 fake websites. Dad picks up one of the brochures, studies the fine print at the bottom. It says he's a certified financial planner. He's not. The CFP board has no record of him. I checked. How did I not check? Because he didn't give you time, I say? He built urgency into everything. Act now, limited window, exclusive access. Checking would mean slowing down, and slowing down meant missing out. My brother pulls up something on his laptop. The address he gave you? The UPS store? I pulled their security footage from the dates on your bank transfers. He picked up mail twice, both times wearing sunglasses indoors and a hat, both times paying cash for the box rental. You got security footage? I ask. The manager's daughter got scammed last year. Different guy, same tactics. She was very cooperative. Dad leans forward to see the screen. The footage is grainy but clear enough. Mark in profile signing for a package. Mark counting bills at the counter. Mark glancing at the camera once briefly, then adjusting his hat lower. He knows where the cameras are. Dad says. He's done this before? The next morning, Rachel arrives with 2 other investigators and a tech who sets up recording equipment in Dad's living room. They wire the coffee table, the lamp, the bookshelf, tiny microphones that look like dust, a camera in the smoke detector that's been there for years but now actually works. We need you to get him talking about specifics, Rachel says. Dollar amounts, account numbers, other clients, anything that contradicts what he's told you before or implies a pattern. What if he won't talk about it? Dad asks. Then ask why. People who have nothing to hide don't avoid questions. They answer them. She shows Dad a list of prompts. Questions designed to sound innocent but create legal exposure. How many clients does he typically manage? What's his compliance process? Who audits his transactions? I'm not good at this, Dad says. You don't need to be. You're a concerned client asking reasonable questions, that's all. They position themselves in the garage, the bedroom, the basement, anywhere with a clear line to the living room, but out of sight. I'm supposed to leave, but Rachel asks me to stay in the kitchen, just out of view. If he sees you, he might get defensive, she says. But if your father needs support, you're close. Mark arrives 12 minutes late, apologetic and breezy. He's carrying a leather portfolio and a coffee from somewhere expensive. He hugs Dad like they're old friends, asks about his knee, mentions the weather. Everything designed to reset the mood, to make the banking error feel like a minor blip. So I talked to my contact at the bank, Mark says, settling into the couch. Apparently they've rolled out some new fraud detection software. Very aggressive. It's been flagging legitimate transactions all week. Total nightmare for my clients. They said the account was frozen, Dad says. Right, which is standard procedure when the software flags something, but it's easily resolved. I just need you to call them, confirm the transfers are authorized, and we're back on track. What if I want to wait? Mark's smile doesn't slip, but something tightens around his eyes. Wait for what? To understand where the money's going. You've mentioned Meridian, the tech fund, the growth portfolio, but I don't have paperwork for any of it. You have the summaries I gave you. Those don't show account numbers, or how to access the funds directly. Because they're managed funds. I handle the access. That's what you're paying me for. Mark's tone shifts. Still friendly, but cooler. Your daughter doesn't understand high-yield investing. Most people don't. That's why they stay in low-return savings accounts and wonder why they're not building wealth. A fiduciary will put you in index funds and charge you a percentage to do nothing. You'll make 4% a year if you're lucky. What I'm offering is 10, 12, sometimes 15% returns. But it requires trust. It requires commitment. What if I want to pull out? The room goes quiet. Mark sets down his coffee. Pull out of what? The investments. All of them. I want to liquidate and move everything back to my savings account. Mark leans forward. His voice drops, intimate and concerned. Is this really about the investments? Or is this about your daughter not trusting me? It's about me wanting to see my money. You can see it anytime. I send you statements every quarter. I want to see the actual accounts. Log in myself. Verify the balances. That's not how managed portfolios work. You don't get direct access because that creates liability issues. If you make a trade without consulting me, you could tank your returns. That's why you hired a professional. Dad's voice strengthens. I didn't hire you. You offered to help. For free. You said there was no cost. There's no upfront cost. I take a performance fee. A percentage of your gains. That's standard. How much? It's in the contract. I don't remember signing a contract. Mark opens his portfolio, flips through pages. Right here. Your signature. Dated November 3rd. Dad takes the paper. Studies it. This isn't my signature. Of course it is. The loops are wrong. I don't sign my name like that. Mark's smile finally cracks. You're saying I forged your signature? I'm saying I don't remember signing this. You signed it at the coffee shop. After our second meeting, I watched you do it. Then why don't I remember? Mark stands. The warmth is gone now, replaced by something colder and more calculated. I think your daughter has gotten into your head. I think she's convinced you that someone trying to help you is actually trying to hurt you. And honestly, that's insulting. I've spent months building your portfolio, managing your risk, protecting your assets, and this is the thanks I get? I just want to see the accounts. Fine. I'll send you login credentials tonight. You can see every transaction, every holding, every trade. Will that satisfy you? Yes. And when you see that everything is exactly where I said it would be, will you apologize? Dad doesn't answer. Mark grabs his portfolio. I have other clients who actually appreciate what I do for them. People who understand that wealth building requires trust. If you want to throw that away because your daughter has trust issues, that's your choice. But don't expect me to keep working for free while you question every move I make. He's at the door when Dad speaks again. How many other clients? Mark stops. What? You said other clients. How many? That's confidential. Roughly. I don't see how that's relevant. Because if you're managing a dozen portfolios, you're doing a lot of work for no upfront sunk cost. That doesn't make sense unless you're making money some other way. Mark's jaw tightens. I'm making money from performance fees, like I said. Show me one statement. One account where I've actually made money. I'll send everything tonight. Show me now. Mark pulls out his phone, scrolls, turns the screen toward Dad. There, Meridian, up 18% since October. Dad squints at the screen. That's a screenshot, not a live account. It's from the portal. Then log into the portal. Show me the live balance. I don't have the login on my phone. You just said you'd send me credentials tonight. You must have them somewhere. Mark's face flushes. This is ridiculous. I'm not standing here being interrogated like a criminal. Then sit down, Rachel says, stepping into the room. Her badge is already out. The other two investigators are right behind her. Mark goes very still. His eyes flick to the door, to the windows, back to Rachel. Marcus Brennan, she says, we have some questions about your business practices. Mark looks at Dad. The betrayal on his face is almost convincing. You set me up. I asked you questions, Dad says. You couldn't answer them. The investigators move in smooth and practiced. They ask Mark to put down the portfolio, to keep his hands visible, to step away from the door. He complies, but his face has gone blank. All the warmth, all the charm, erased like someone flipped a switch. Rachel opens the portfolio. Inside are contracts identical to Dad's. 8 of them. Different names, same forged signatures, same fake account numbers. You brought these for him, she says. Mark doesn't respond. How many people have you done this to? Nothing. Rachel nods to her team. One of them recites rights in a flat procedural voice while the other guides Mark's hands behind his back. The cuffs click shut, and Mark finally looks at Dad. I helped you, he says. I gave you opportunities you never would have found on your own. You stole from me, Dad says. I gave you hope. The investigators walk him out, through the living room, past the kitchen where I'm standing with my hand over my mouth, past the coffee table with its hidden microphones and the smoke detector with its camera, past the life he tried to dismantle one coffee meeting at a time. Dad sits down hard on the couch. His hands are shaking. Did I do okay? He asks. I cross the room and pull him into a hug. You did perfect. Rachel calls 3 days later to say they've executed search warrants on Mark's apartment, his storage unit, and his car. What they found turns my stomach. Files, she says. Physical files on 43 individuals, organized by vulnerability level. Your father was in a folder labeled high trust, low oversight. What does that mean? It means Mark profiled him, identified him as someone who'd be grateful for attention, unlikely to ask hard questions, and isolated enough that warning signs wouldn't reach family quickly. Dad's sitting across from me when she says this. His face goes gray. There are notes in the margins, Rachel continues. Personal details, your father's knee surgery, his late wife's name, the fact that he volunteers at the library. Mark wrote, use Betty's memory, mention legacy planning in red ink. I close my eyes. He researched him extensively. Every victim has a file like this. He'd spend weeks gathering information before making contact. Social media, public records, casual conversations at community centers. He built profiles like he was running intelligence operations. How many victims total? We've confirmed 12 so far, all over 65. Combined losses around $400,000. But we think there are more. Some people won't come forward because they're embarrassed. Others don't realize they've been targeted yet. Yet? Some of his files are labeled in progress. People he was still grooming. We're contacting them now. Dad stands abruptly and walks to the window. His shoulders are rigid. The state attorney general wants to meet with victims, Rachel says. Build a coordinated case. If your father's willing to participate, it would help. I'll ask him. After I hang up, Dad speaks without turning around. He wrote about Betty. I know. He asked me about her, how we met, what she liked. I thought he was being kind. I thought he cared. He wanted information, that's all it ever was. I told him things I haven't told anyone, private things, and he wrote them down so he could use them against me. Not against you, to manipulate you, there's a difference. Dad turns. His eyes are wet. Is there? The victims' meeting happens in a community center conference room on a Tuesday afternoon. 12 people scattered across folding chairs, most of them elderly, all of them looking like they'd rather be anywhere else. Rachel stands at the front with a district attorney named Patricia Voss, who has the kind of calm authority that makes you believe things might actually get fixed. Thank you all for coming, Patricia says. I know this isn't easy, but what you're doing today matters. Every statement you give, every detail you remember, strengthens the case we're building. An older man in the front row raises his hand. What happens to him? Marcus Brennan is currently being held on 15 counts of financial exploitation of the elderly, 12 counts of fraud, and 8 counts of identity theft. If convicted on all counts, he's looking at 20 to 30 years. That's not enough, a woman near the back says. Her voice shakes. He took everything from me. My savings, my house down payment, my son's college fund. 20 years doesn't give that back. You're right, Patricia says. It doesn't. But it stops him from doing this to anyone else. And we're working with a victims' compensation fund to help recover losses. How much, someone asks. It depends on the fund's available resources and the total damages. Typically 10 to 30% of losses. The room deflates. 10% of 40,000 is 4,000. That doesn't fix anything. Dad clears his throat. How did he find us? Rachel pulls up a slide on the projector. It's a map with 12 red pins scattered across 3 towns. He targeted senior centers, community events, church groups, places where people gather and trust comes easy. He'd show up as a volunteer or a guest speaker, offer free financial literacy workshops, build credibility before he ever approached anyone individually. I met him at the library, Dad says. He was donating books. Mrs. Kowalski met him at a health seminar, Rachel says, gesturing to the woman in the back. Mr. Patel met him at a community potluck. He embedded himself into your lives before you realized he was selling anything. Another slide. Photos of Mark at various events, always smiling, always dressed just professionally enough. In one, he's shaking hands with a pastor. In another, he's helping someone carry groceries. He was patient, Rachel continues. Some of you he contacted 6 months before he ever mentioned investments. He built relationships, learned your routines, figured out who was isolated, who was anxious about money, who'd lost a spouse recently, and was making financial decisions alone for the first time. A woman in her 70s starts crying. The man next to her puts a hand on her shoulder. He called me on my birthday, she says. Sent flowers. I thought he was a friend. Patricia sits down in an empty chair, leveling herself with the group. He was good at this. That's not a compliment, it's a fact. He's a professional con artist with years of practice. The reason you're all here isn't because you were careless. It's because he was skilled. Why? Because he was charming. Because he seemed helpful. Those aren't red flags, they're normal human behavior. He weaponized trust. That's on him, not you. Dad speaks again. Quieter now. How much did he take from everyone? Rachel checks her notes. Confirmed losses total $394,000. Pending investigations could push that over $500,000. The number hangs in the air. Someone swears under their breath. Did he spend it? Mr. Patel asks. Some. We've traced transactions to luxury purchases, travel, rent on a high-end apartment, but a significant portion went into offshore accounts. We're working with federal authorities to freeze and recover those assets. How long does that take? Months, maybe years. Financial fraud cases are complicated, but every dollar we recover goes back to victims. They go around the room, each person sharing their story. The details blur together because they're all variations of the same con. Mark identified a need, offered a solution, built urgency, isolated the victim from outside advice, and drained accounts while providing fake statements that showed growth instead of loss. Mrs. Kowalski lost $60,000 she'd been saving to move into assisted living. Now she's stuck in a house she can't maintain because she can't afford anywhere else. Mr. Patel lost $85,000 from an account he'd planned to pass to his grandchildren. He hasn't told them yet. A woman named Donna lost her late husband's life insurance payout. $32,000 gone in 4 months. When it's Dad's turn, he keeps it brief. $40,000. I thought I was investing in my future. Turns out I was funding his. A few people nod. No one asks questions. There's nothing left to ask. After the meeting, people linger in small groups. Quiet conversations, exchanged phone numbers, shared exhaustion. Dad talks to Mr. Patel for a while. Both of them standing by the coffee station with paper cups they're not drinking from. Rachel pulls me aside. Your father did well in the controlled contact. His questions gave us everything we needed to establish intent and pattern. The recording's been submitted as evidence. What happens next? Arraignment next week. Trial in a few months, assuming he doesn't take a plea. We'll need your father to testify. He'll do it. Good. Because his testimony matters. He's articulate, credible, and he kept records. Juries respond to that. Dad and Mr. Patel exchange numbers before we leave. On the drive home, Dad stares out the window. Mr. Patel said Mark told him the same thing about limited opportunities, he says. Word for word. The same pitch. He had a script. How many times do you think he's done this? More than 12. How many people didn't report it? I don't answer because I don't know. When we get home, there's a message from the state attorney general's office. Patricia Voss herself asking if Dad would be willing to speak at a press conference. They're announcing the charges publicly and want a victim's perspective to show the human cost. Dad listens to the voicemail twice, then deletes it. I can't do that, he says. You don't have to. Everyone will know. The neighbors, the library, people at church, they'll all know I was scammed. They'll know you were targeted by a criminal. That's different. It doesn't feel different. I sit down next to him. Mr. Patel's doing it. So is Mrs. Kowalski. They want people to know this wasn't their fault. What if I freeze? What if I say something wrong? Then Patricia will step in. She's not putting you up there to humiliate you. She's doing it because your story matters. Dad's quiet for a long time. Then he picks up the phone and calls her back. The press conference is scheduled for Friday. The courthouse steps are crowded with cameras when we arrive Friday morning. Dad stops at the bottom, staring up at the microphones clustered around a podium. Patricia stands beside it, talking to a woman with a notepad. Mr. Patel is already there, hands folded, looking more nervous than I've ever seen him. We can leave, I say quietly. Dad shakes his head and keeps walking. Patricia sees us and waves us over. Raymond, thank you for coming. We're starting in 5 minutes. You'll speak third after Mr. Patel and Mrs. Kowalski. Keep it to 2 minutes. Focus on what happened and how it affected you. Don't worry about the legal details, I'll handle that. Dad nods, his jaw is tight. Mrs. Kowalski arrives in a navy dress, her daughter beside her. She looks smaller than she did at the victims' meeting, but her face is set. When Patricia calls everyone to order, the crowd quiets fast. Good morning, I'm Patricia Voss, Senior Assistant Attorney General. Today we're announcing charges against Marcus Allen Brennan, who has been indicted on 38 counts of financial exploitation, fraud, and identity theft targeting elderly victims across 3 counties. She lays out the basics: the profiling system, the fake investment accounts, the systematic targeting of senior centers and community groups, the estimated $500,000 in losses. Her voice stays level, factual, but every number lands like a punch. This wasn't opportunistic crime, she says. This was calculated, sustained predation. Mr. Brennan spent months researching his victims, building trust, and engineering situations where they felt both urgency and isolation. What you'll hear today are the stories of people who did nothing wrong except trust someone who presented himself as a professional. She introduces Mr. Patel first. He steps to the microphone and pulls a folded piece of paper from his pocket. His hands shake as he unfolds it. My name is Vijay Patel. I am 74 years old. Last year, a man named Marcus Brennan convinced me to move $85,000 from a savings account into what he called a high-yield senior security fund. He said it was specifically designed for retirees who wanted safe growth. He showed me paperwork. He gave me monthly statements. Everything looked legitimate. Mr. Patel pauses, swallows hard. That money was supposed to go to my grandchildren, for college, for their futures. Now it's gone. And when I told my son what happened, he asked why I didn't consult him first. I didn't have an answer. I thought I was being responsible. I thought I was securing their future, not destroying it. His voice cracks on the last word. He folds the paper back up and steps away. Mrs. Kowalski goes next. She doesn't use notes. Marcus Brennan called me on my birthday, she says. He sent flowers. He asked about my husband, who passed 4 years ago. He said he understood how hard it was to manage finances alone after losing a spouse. He offered to help. I trusted him because he seemed kind. She stops, stares directly into the nearest camera. He took $60,000 from me. Money I saved for 30 years so I could move into a place where I'd be safe when I got older. Now I'm 76, living in a house I can't maintain, and I can't afford to move. That's what his kindness cost. She steps back. No one speaks. Patricia gestures to Dad. He walks to the microphone like he's approaching a ledge. My name is Raymond Foster. I'm 67. Marcus Brennan targeted me after my wife died. He knew I was vulnerable. He knew I was alone. He researched her. He wrote her name in his files and used her memory machinery to manipulate me. Dad's voice is steady, but I can see his hands gripping the podium. He took $40,000. But more than that, he took my confidence, my sense of judgment, my ability to trust my own decisions. For months, I believed I was investing wisely. I believed I was doing what my wife would have wanted. Instead, I was being robbed by someone who smiled while he did it. He looks up from the microphone, scanning the crowd. If you're watching this and you think you could never fall for something like this, you're wrong. I was a manager for 30 years. I handled budgets, personnel, complex decisions. I wasn't careless. I wasn't stupid. I was targeted by someone who made this his profession. And if it happened to me, it can happen to anyone. The cameras flash as he steps back. Patricia takes the microphone again. Arraignment is Monday at 9 a.m. We expect Mr. Brennan to plead not guilty, which means this will go to trial. We're asking anyone who believes they may have been targeted by Mr. Brennan to contact our office. You are not alone, and you are not at fault. She lists a hotline number twice. Reporters shout questions, but Patricia ends the conference and ushers the victims inside. In the lobby, Mrs. Kowalski sits on a bench and exhales like she's been holding her breath for an hour. Mr. Patel leans against the wall, eyes closed. Dad stands by the window, watching people on the street. You did well, Patricia says, approaching him. That last part about judgment and trust. That's what people need to hear. Scams like this work because they exploit normal human behavior. How many calls do you think you'll get? Dad asks. Dozens, maybe more. A lot of people don't realize they've been scammed until they hear someone else describe the exact same experience. By Monday, the hotline has logged 63 calls. 19 of them describe interactions with Mark that match his known patterns. 8 have already lost money. The rest were still in the grooming phase, being primed for the pitch that hadn't come yet. Rachel calls that afternoon. We've identified 6 additional victims who filed reports after seeing the press conference. Combined losses around $140,000. We're amending the charges. Is that good or bad? Good for the case. Bad for the victims. Every new person who comes forward is someone else he destroyed. The arraignment is fast. Mark stands in an orange jumpsuit, hands cuffed, while his public defender enters a not guilty plea. The judge sets bail at $500,000. Mark's family doesn't post it. He stays in custody. Trial is set for early September, 3 months out. Patricia warns us it's going to be a long process. She's right. The prosecution spends weeks building their case. Financial analysts comb through bank records. Forensic accountants trace every transaction. Digital investigators recover emails Mark thought he'd deleted. The evidence file grows to over 4,000 pages. In July, Patricia's office releases a portion of the evidence to the media. Not everything, just enough to show the scope. Doctored bank statements with forged signatures. Fake investment dashboards showing fictional returns. A spreadsheet labeled target status with 43 names, color-coded by how much money they had and how isolated they were. But it's the audio recordings that break the internet. Mark recorded himself. Not the conversations with victims, those he kept clean. But after meetings, he'd dictate notes into his phone. Observations, strategies, mockery. The prosecution releases 3 clips. In the first, Mark laughs while describing Mr. Patel. Guy's terrified his grandkids won't respect him if he doesn't leave them money. Easiest leverage I've ever had. Mention legacy twice, and he's begging to invest more. In the second, he talks about Mrs. Kowalski. Widow, isolated, desperate for companionship. I sent flowers once, and now she thinks I'm her friend. This is going to be simple. In the third, he talks about my father. Raymond's the perfect Mark. Grieving, guilty he didn't leave his wife a bigger nest egg, and too proud to admit he doesn't understand modern investing. I'll have him at 6 figures by Christmas. The recordings go viral. Local news picks them up, then regional, then national. By the end of the week, Mark's face is on morning talk shows and true crime podcasts. People who've never heard of him before are calling him a monster. Dad watches the coverage once, then turns it off. I don't need to hear it again, he says. But the rest of the world does. The story spreads because it's visceral. Not abstract financial crime, but recorded proof of a predator laughing at the people he hurt. The state attorney general's office is flooded with calls. More victims, more witnesses, people who saw Mark at events and thought something felt off but didn't say anything. A woman who worked at a bank and noticed Mark accompanying elderly clients to large withdrawals but didn't report it because he seemed polite. By August, the amended charges list 24 victims and over $700,000 in confirmed losses. Mark's defense attorney tries to get the audio recordings excluded, arguing they were illegally obtained. The judge denies the motion. They were found during a lawful search, recorded by Mark himself, and directly relevant to proving intent. The trial starts the first week of September. The courtroom is packed. Victims fill the front rows. Reporters line the back. I sit beside Dad, who has a notepad in his lap even though he's not taking notes. He just needs something to hold. Patricia's opening statement is surgical. She walks the jury through Mark's operation step by step. The research phase, the approach, the pitch, the manipulation, the extraction. She shows them the files, the fake documents, the recordings. She plays the audio clips in full. When Mark's laughter echoes through the courtroom, several jurors visibly flinch. This wasn't a mistake, Patricia says. This wasn't desperation. This was a business. Marcus Brennan built a system to exploit the elderly, and he refined that system over years. You'll hear from his victims, people who trusted him because he engineered that trust. And you'll hear him, in his own words, describing them as marks, as easy targets, as people too ashamed to fight back. The defense attorney stands. His argument is predictable. Mark made bad decisions, but he believed the investments were real. He was in over his head, not malicious. The victims were unfortunate casualties of a failing business model, not intentional targets. The jury looks skeptical before he's halfway through. The prosecution calls witnesses in waves, bank employees who processed withdrawals, forensic accountants who traced the money, digital experts who recovered deleted files. Each one adds another layer of evidence that this wasn't a failed business, it was systematic theft. Then they call the victims. Mr. Patel goes first. He describes meeting Mark at a community potluck, the months of friendly conversation before money was ever mentioned, the careful way Mark framed the investment as a family legacy tool. He knew exactly what to say, Mr. Patel testifies. He didn't pressure me. He made me feel like I was making a smart decision, like I was taking care of my grandchildren. Mrs. Kowalski cries on the stand. She describes the flowers, the birthday call, the way Mark listened when she talked about her late husband. I thought he cared, she says. I thought he was a friend. The defense attorney tries to cross-examine, suggesting she should have consulted family or verified credentials. Patricia objects twice. The judge sustains both times. On the fourth day, Dad takes the stand. He's wearing the same suit he wore to the press conference. His hands are steady. Patricia walks him through the timeline. The library meeting, the coffee conversations, the workshop, the investment pitch, the fake statements, the growing anxiety, the discovery. When did you realize something was wrong? Patricia asks. Why didn't you ask those questions? Dad looks directly at Mark. Because he made me feel like I didn't need to. He built trust so carefully that doubt felt like betrayal. I wanted to believe him because he made me feel capable again after months of feeling lost. Patricia shows him the audio recording, the one where Mark calls him the perfect Mark. Do you recognize this? Yes. How did it feel to hear that? Dad's jaw tightens. Like being robbed twice. Once of my money, once of my dignity. The defense attorney's cross-examination is brief and ineffective. He tries to suggest Dad should have been more cautious, but every question just reinforces how calculated Mark's approach was. When Dad steps down, he looks exhausted but solid. The trial lasts 2 weeks. Closing arguments happen on a Friday. Patricia's is devastating. She walks the jury through every piece of evidence again, connecting each lie to a specific victim, each recording to a specific betrayal. Marcus Brennan is not a failed businessman, she says. He's a predator. He targeted vulnerable people, exploited their trust, and laughed while he did it. The evidence is overwhelming. The victims are real. The harm is undeniable. Hold him accountable. The jury deliberates for 4 hours. When they return, the forewoman stands. The clerk reads the verdict. Guilty on count 1. Guilty on count 2. Guilty on count 3. It keeps going. 38 counts, 38 guilty verdicts. Mark's face doesn't change. He stares straight ahead while the clerk reads, but his hands are shaking. Dad stands when the last count is read. So do Mr. Patel and Mrs. Kowalski and every other victim in the courtroom. No one speaks, but the sound of people rising fills the space. The judge sets sentencing for October. Outside, reporters swarm the steps again. Patricia makes a brief statement, thanking the victims for their courage and the jury for their attention. Then she steps aside and lets Dad speak. This verdict doesn't give me my money back, he says. It doesn't undo the months I spent believing I'd made a terrible mistake, but it proves that what happened to me and everyone else in that courtroom wasn't our fault. It was a crime, and the person responsible is being held accountable. A reporter shouts a question about restitution. Dad shakes his head. I don't know if I'll ever see that money again, but if sharing my story stops one more person from trusting someone like Marcus Brennan, then it's worth it. The cameras flash. Dad walks down the steps without waiting for more questions. When we reach the car, he sits in the passenger seat and exhales slowly. How do you feel, I ask. Tired, relieved, still angry. That's fair. But lighter. Like I can finally breathe. Sentencing happens 6 weeks later. The courtroom is full again. Mark stands in handcuffs while the judge reviews the case. She's blunt. Mr. Brennan, you engaged in a prolonged, calculated campaign to exploit some of the most vulnerable members of our community. You targeted people who were grieving, isolated, and anxious about their futures. You weaponized their trust. The harm you caused is both financial and psychological, and the evidence shows you felt no remorse. She sentences him to 28 years in state prison. No parole eligibility for 15 years. Mark is 71 years old. He'll likely die behind bars. When the judge's gavel falls, the courtroom erupts. Not in cheers, but in something quieter. Relief. Validation. The sound of people crying and clapping at the same time. Dad doesn't clap. He just closes his eyes and nods once. Outside, Mr. Patel hugs him. Mrs. Kowalski squeezes his hand. Other victims whose names I don't know stop to thank him for speaking at the press conference, for testifying, for refusing to stay silent. You made this possible, one woman says. Dad shakes his head. We all did. The restitution fund distributes payments in November. Dad receives $11,000. Not even a third of what he lost, but more than he expected. It's something, he says when the check arrives. It's not nothing. He donates half of it to a senior advocacy organization. The rest goes into a new savings account with my name as a co-signer. Just in case, he says. Just in case. Dad's first seminar is at the community center where Mark found Mr. Patel. The irony isn't lost on anyone. 20 people show up, most of them over 60. A few with adult children hovering protectively nearby. Dad stands at the front with a handout he designed himself. Red flags to watch for, questions to ask, resources to call. He doesn't use notes. If someone discourages you from consulting family, that's a warning, he says. If they create urgency around decisions that should take time, that's a warning. If they make you feel foolish for asking basic questions about credentials or fees, that's a warning. A woman in the third row raises her hand. What if you already gave them money? Then you call the state attorney general's hotline. You file a report. You don't wait because you're embarrassed. Embarrassment is what they count on. He talks for 40 minutes. Afterward, people line up to ask questions, to share their own near misses, to thank him for speaking plainly about something most people still whisper about. When the room clears, Dad folds his handouts and looks at me. You did good, I say. You did it when you were ready. He nods slowly, then smiles in a way I haven't seen since before Mom died. Not happiness exactly, but something close. Purpose. On the drive home, he's quiet until we hit the last stoplight before his street. I'm not fixed, he says, but I'm not broken either. I reach over and squeeze his hand. Neither of us are.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and drop your favorite part in the comments. See you in the next one.